start a rolling upgrade, run the installer script, and after the menu loads, notice that the option to upgrade is G, not U as you might expect. U is actually for uninstalling the product, which is probably the opposite of what you want to do here. The menu gives you two choices for upgrading, a full upgrade and a rolling upgrade. The difference between a full upgrade and a rolling upgrade is that a full upgrade will upgrade all of the cluster nodes at the same time, while a rolling upgrade will upgrade the cluster nodes one at a time in a rolling fashion. The advantage of a full upgrade is that the process is much simpler, and it's faster because the upgrade is done all at once. The advantage of a rolling upgrade is that because it only upgrades one node at a time, it will actually switch your cluster service groups to, say, node B while node A is being upgraded. So a rolling upgrade takes longer and it adds some complexity, but it also minimizes the impact to production because the cluster groups are still running on another node while the current node is being updated. So if you've got a maintenance window where you can actually take a sustained outage for a little while, a full upgrade is usually easiest. If you don't have the luxury of a maintenance window, a rolling upgrade will at least allow you to minimize the impact to production, but you'll still have outages while the cluster groups are being switched between cluster nodes during the rolling upgrade process. In this video, we'll do a rolling upgrade. There's actually another video where we do a full upgrade. At this point, it's looking for the name of one of the nodes in the cluster. Since it already remembers one of the nodes, we'll just hit enter. We'll say yes here to let it start the rolling upgrade on server 102. So right now there are 3 service groups running on server 101 and only 1 service group running on server 102. The VCS group is actually a parallel group, which means that it runs on multiple nodes simultaneously, so we won't worry about that. But the cluster service and the YAP101 groups are failover groups, meaning that they run on only one node at a time, and they fail over to other groups as needed. Since there are more cluster groups online on server 101, the install script recommends starting the rolling upgrade on server 102 in order to minimize any impact to production as a result of switching groups around. At this point, it's going to do an initial check to make sure that an upgrade is possible. So at the next screen, it's letting us know that the version of Storage Foundation that we are upgrading to only supports Veritas File System version 7. So if you're running a file system version that is earlier than version 7, you'll want to use the vxfsconvert command in order to upgrade it before you actually perform the upgrade. And it also gives us the command to check the current file system version, and that command is fstyp-v, or fstype-v. There's also a warning that lets us know that the VRTS SFMH module is going to be upgraded. This module is a client that reports to a central server for Veritas Operations Manager, or VOM. Let's say yes to continue. Here's a list of modules that will be affected during the upgrade. During the upgrade process, the installer script is going to uninstall and reinstall various modules. So the first list shows the modules that will be uninstalled, and the second list shows the modules being installed and upgraded. And we can just hit enter a few times to get past this. Now it's going to start the upgrade process on server 102. The first step is to stop the Storage Foundation HA processes on that node. While it's upgrading node server 102, the service groups that are running on node server 101 will still be running, so there won't be an interruption to production during this time. And this could take a few minutes, so let's go ahead and fast forward here. And say yes to let it update the licenses. Now that it's upgraded server 102, it wants to upgrade server 101, so let's say yes. So now it's basically going to repeat the same pre-install checks and warnings that we just did on server 102. So at this point, remember that those failover service groups are still running on server 101. Since we're about to upgrade server 101, we need to switch them to server 102. It's asking us if we want to do this manually. If we say no to this question, the script will actually do it for us. So let's say no to let the script do the switch for us. And now it's warning us that while we're switching the groups over, there'll be an interruption to production. Remember that even though a rolling upgrade minimizes the impact to production, you will still have the impact that occurs while a cluster group switch is taking place. So let's say yes here to continue. And now it's switching the groups to server 102. And just like with server 102, it's going to stop the Storage Foundation HA processes on server 101. Since the groups are now running on server 102, they'll still be online while it does this on server 101. And this could take a few minutes, so let's go ahead and fast forward here. So when you're doing an upgrade, this is something that you may occasionally run into, especially on Linux. Sometimes the OS doesn't want to unload a few of the modules, usually because there's something that's keeping a handle on them. If you run into this, you can usually clear it up just by rebooting the node. And remember that the service groups are still running on the other node, so a reboot of this node isn't going to affect production at this point. So we'll go ahead and reboot and then restart the installer script. Fortunately, the installer script is smart enough to detect that a rolling upgrade is already in process, so once it realizes this, it'll let us pick up where we left off. So let's go ahead and say yes to retry the upgrade on server 101. And we'll get the same pre-installation notes and warnings that we've already seen before, so let's just enter our way through them. And this could take a few minutes, so let's go ahead and fast forward here. So this time it was able to successfully stop all of the modules, so it's going to run through the upgrade on server 101. And say yes to let it update the licenses. And this could take a few minutes, so let's go ahead and fast forward here. So at this point, we've successfully completed what the installation script calls Phase 1. And Phase 1 is just the process of upgrading the lower level binaries and modules on both of the nodes. In Phase 2, it's going to upgrade the cluster engine, also known as HAD or HAD. And Phase 2 is actually easier than Phase 1 because it does it on all nodes simultaneously. We'll go ahead and say yes here, and then wait for it to do some more pre-install checks. And here's a list of modules that are going to be upgraded. At this point, it's asking us if we want to stop the VCS processes. Now in this case, the script is going to stop the processes using a special argument that will tell it to leave the cluster resources online. So it'll stop and restart the cluster engine, but it won't bring down your cluster service groups, so it won't impact production. So if you've ever issued an HA-stop-force command, it's basically the same concept. So technically this will stop the cluster service group, but that usually has no effect on your clustered applications. So your actual production will still be running during this process. So let's go ahead and say yes, and let's fast forward a bit while it does this. And the script is complete. Alright, so it tried to connect to Symantec.com to check for updates, but since this is an isolated lab, it wasn't able to connect, but that's fine. Alright, so let's do a quick check here to see how things look. And as you can see, our service groups are running, and it looks like the modules have been upgraded. one other thing that I should point out is that when you upgrade Storage Foundation, it doesn't actually make any changes to the disk groups themselves. That's actually another step that you perform after the upgrade. The reason for this is that once you've upgraded the disk group version, it actually becomes unreadable to older versions of Storage Foundation. So before doing the disk group upgrade, make sure that you're happy with the upgraded version, because the disk group upgrade is kind of a one-way street. And it's actually a very quick and simple process, and since this is just a lab, let's go ahead and run it just to show you how it works. To see the current disk group version, you can run vxdg list followed by the name of the disk group. In this case, the disk group version is 160. To upgrade it, just type vxdg upgrade and then the name of the disk group again. And as you can see, it doesn't take long to do the upgrade. So if we run vxdg list again, we can see that the disk group version is now at 180. Before it was at 160, so the disk group upgrade is done. So at this point, you can rerun the installer script and select the post-install check to make sure that everything is working okay. There's actually another video on that, so I'm not going to redo it here. So thanks for watching, and that's it.